Welcome, everybody, to Navigating Change, the podcast from Tybal Inc. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here once again, as if time is just on a repeating loop. My life is just one big Groundhog Day. It's Howard Tybal.
This is all I do, by the way, about this podcast. My life is the podcast.
As it is mine. How are you this morning, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited about the conversation we're going to have today.
Today, a fantastic guest. Now, we've already had a guest from his organization, Unimarket, great friends of the show. You might remember Brian Sweeney. We'll post the link to our latest Brian Sweeney episode in the show notes today. CEO of Unimarket, Peter Kane. Peter, welcome to Navigating Change.
Thanks, Pete. Really good to be joining you guys.
This idea of dog fooding, this was actually your idea as we were sort of spitballing ideas about what we were going to talk about today, and we landed on this concept of dog fooding, and it's one that Howard and I have been talking about in a rather roundabout way, I think, over the last year. It's this idea of how we build institutions that are as adaptable and willing to change as are the students that we are educating. And sometimes when we run into these sort of roadblocks, when we hit loggerheads, often, we look back at this, at the situation and realize maybe we're not as adaptable as we love to think we are.
What I love about that concept, and it can be a bit of a contentious concept, but this idea that looking honestly at our willingness to have our back office, our systems, our supports be as good as, for example, the academic experience we produce for our students. And I think that's a pretty high bar. When you look at this and you look at the sort of the higher education as a particular industry, what's been your experience from what you've heard from people in your teams that cause you to say, you know what, why can't we raise the bar here? What are some of the observations you've taken away from this dilemma of being as good as what we deliver to our students?
Yeah, well, an interesting point about that is that how higher education talks about itself, and this is from the internal, runnings of the university side of things as opposed to the student side. But how they talk about themselves is reluctant to change, not best in terms of being modern and use of technology and so forth. So that in itself is an issue if they talk about themselves in that way. One of the things I love about higher education is that there's no more important endeavour than universities. It's shaping the minds of the future. It's what leads to young kids being able to get out of poverty and so forth. So it has, it's where most of the research for things that are going to change the future of the world is going to come from. It usually gets seeded within higher education institutions. So there's nothing more important, in society, in my mind, than education. So it has a very, very critical role. Mm. But why shouldn't it be as good internally in terms of what it's trying to produce externally? And it does seem to be that the back office administrative side of higher education, it's a real struggle for them to be pushing out, and I think they should be pushing more quickly. There should be an imperative and urgency around making themselves more efficient and more effective. Yeah. So the observations I would have is, one, they talk about themselves like it's really, really hard work to make change. And at the same time, they're actually very keen to be adopting new technology. So there's an interesting sort of, juxtaposition between a willingness and an openness to want to be doing things, but almost a concept that the machinery makes it hard.
That's a fascinating observation, and it's one that I, in my work with my own institution, we have really mastered the success through suffering methodology of communicating with teams. Like we have made it so difficult on ourselves, but it's our own doing, and it really comes down to, I think what you're poking at here is this idea that language matters, and we have so internalized internalized the script of we can't change, we can't work together, we're mired in the past, too many legacy systems, it would be impossible for us to do what we demonstrate in class for ourselves. And drives right back to your point about even user interface and engagement and ease of use. All of that, I think, drives straight down to when you get it right, to this idea of building teams and to individual employees who are comfortable and feel safe to make change. They are a more empowered body as a result.
If we're really serious about wanting to make these improvements, we got to find a way to tell a different story. And what that comes down to, because I think for every example we have where an institution appears to be moving too slowly around, for example, e-procurement or strategic investments, finding ways to have their procurement area become sort of a strategic lever and influencing up to their CFO and their cabinets in a powerful way. I think as many examples as we have that are challenged, we've got examples of leaders out there who are making change. Some because they feel the urgency is great for their institutions, and others because that's what their mindset is. I mean, ultimately in your work, Peter, and my work, the best people to be working with are those who are interested in implementing something and making some of these changes happen. And I have worked over the many years with those where it feels at times like pulling teeth, and other times they are pushing me to raise the bar. The nature of the market is huge. I mean, there are so many institutions out there. I would imagine that for you, the concept of having an internal partner is a critical success factor for a project working with Unimarket to be successful. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that, because of our belief in how important, taking your customers through that journey is, our whole business model is geared around being incentivized to do that very thing. Because, in the technology industry, for whatever reasons, it's at times had a bad reputation as being, drop and run, sort of implement technology, but not really only care about putting in the technology and not really caring about the outcome and how effective it is and so forth. So we've geared ourselves specifically to have a business model that actually incentivizes us to be with our customers for the journey. And I think you would have got the sense at the user conference how enthusiastic our customers are about the impact that implementing the Unimarket technology is actually having in their institutions.
Well, you know what they're excited about, and this is what I have found over the years too, is that when you exceed people's expectations, and sometimes our expectations are low, but when you exceed their expectations in terms of really being customer focused, I think you can go such a long way to have people say, you know what, this is what we've been looking for. And I think the history of external partners or vendors or whatever you want to call those on the outside that are providing these technology solutions, the history has been, for the most part, pretty poor, because the focus has been, as you said, about putting in systems and then moving on to the next thing. And I think it's only been because of so many failures or partial successes where people don't feel the return on investment. And that to me is the end point. And I remember talking about this when you were in the conference, is this idea that in the end, if we're going to put these changes in and we're going to put people through, Pete, I talk about this valley of despair.
Oh, yeah.
So I presented this in front of the group, and when Peter was talking, he reframed it wonderfully as the what was the new one, Pete? It was the hill of hope. What was it?
The mountain of opportunity.
The mountain of opportunity, right? So
I prefer that to hill of hope, Howard. Aspire to largesse.
Mountain of opportunity. See, he had it right there. But in the end, whether it's looking at that phase of challenge when people go through change as people are challenged with it, in the end, Peter, it's really about a return on investment. So, when you look at partnering with an institution, how do you help them see the return on investment on the front end when the truth is it's going to take some time? In some ways, one of the challenges I've found is that we have to really do a good job of managing internal expectations.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of the challenge that particularly procurement folks internally is around the whole business case and how do they sell the need for change and what the benefits would be. I think one of the wonderful things about, and not just Unimarket, but SaaS-based solutions these days, is they're not necessarily, and certainly not with ourselves, very expensive, implementation of technology. So it's much, it's got a lower technology risk, and it's more affordable and it's a lower cost. So the business case, should be much easier to understand. And in my mind, it's a no-brainer. And there's lots of evidence from independent parties around the benefits that e-procurement brings. So a simple example of a couple of our customers, Nassau, which has been a customer for a few years now in Long Island, the system paid for itself within 9 months. Mm-hmm. So it's not. It actually isn't necessarily a long journey that they need to be thinking about from that financial benefits point of view. But I think the benefits go actually much wider than the financial return. To my way of thinking, the financial return is a no-brainer. There's, why wouldn't you be doing e-procurement for the level of investment that's required? But where I see that the great spin-offs for this sort of technology, and you mentioned it earlier, in terms of talking about employee engagement, I think one of the greatest and probably least talked about benefits with e-procurement is employee empowerment and cultural change.
Say more about that.
Well, our key focus is actually on the end user and making things easy for the user. So we're trying to, it's like trying to bringing the simplicity of Amazon type technology into the workplace.
Yep.
And not only does that sort of drive adoption of the system and value, but what does it do for someone if instead of being frustrated by internal processes and paper and all of that, when it comes to them coming to work and doing, and possibly the small amount of time that they use buying the things that they need for their job, if that process is really, really easy, how does that affect the rest of their day in terms of their mindset and how productive they potentially are? And what does it say to them about the institution's concern and care for them and how things are easy for them, that the institution is actually making the investment to give them those sort of tools? Yeah. So I actually think there's a much sort of wider sort of cultural benefit that these sort of technologies can push institutions that's much wider than the straight business case just about that technology.
It's not just about the numbers. It's about because ultimately, if you find a way to have people feel better about their ability to get their job done well, you're going to have a happier employee. It's that simple. And this is an area of frustration for lots of people, especially when we put some new technology in. We often go from feeling satisfied or complacent with a mediocre solution to being frustrated about having a solution that may get us to the end, but it is harder to use. And to me, the power is the fact that you have that as your primary focus, is how are we going to make it more possible for people to do their work well. And I love the simplicity of the Amazon model, right? This idea of we all know now how to shop online. And for the most part, providing people with an insight about how you can do this in your work. But what's so fascinating, I'm sure for you, it must be at times frustrating because here you've got a solution, and it's almost like, how do you get the message out so people can really see the benefit before they're actually experiencing it? And that to me is the real challenge in both your work and my work, is how do they see the benefit on the front end? So when you guys get in there and you're working with folks, do you have that conversation as you're starting a project?
Yes, we do. The best ways of painting those pictures, in many cases, is actually to talk to other institutions who have done it. So, for example, Creighton University, which is in Nebraska, just one simple thing with them, they reduced their cycle time from doing purchase orders from 8 days to 20 hours from implementing the technology. So imagine the level of frustration there must have been previously with 8 days, just to get something processed through the system.
There's a fascinating connection here, observation I just want to make with this idea of usability building in a more adaptive workforce. And you both have mentioned this sort of Amazon as a metaphor for ease of use. Isn't it interesting that, in the year 2000, for example, the success through suffering in our technology systems was really the lesson of the day. I mean, internal systems, internal intranets, they were very difficult to use by today's comparison. But as we have matured as humans, now we go out on the market and we are at home searching Google for things. We're buying things on Amazon. We are using these systems that have been designed for the consumer mindset, and we're bringing our consumer expectations with us into work. And I wonder if there isn't, is that something you think about? And I think for both of you, when we think about the fact that we're bringing our expectations for how easy it is to implement new things at home to work, does that not set us up for at least better understanding some of the frustrations we have in making change in the institution? Yeah,
I think that's a very good point, Pete, and you're absolutely right. Those expectations are higher and higher, but that also should mean that the actual process of getting adoption should actually be quite easy if you are bringing those sort of ease of use technology solutions. So the actual training and onboarding element of implementing a solution like Unimarket is actually very straightforward just because of that very fact. It's actually using technology and the ease of use that people are used to from their consumer lives at home.
It really should be as easy for me to acquire assets for the institution as it is for me to acquire paper towel through Amazon Subscribe and Save.
And I think that is driving the need for companies to provide solutions, and even for institutions think about online learning as a mechanism that's forcing institutions to look at how they deliver their own classes and flipping the classroom. So I think that as technology improves, it puts that internal pressure for people who are used to doing things a certain way to say, maybe we should think differently. What I think, Peter and Pete, that I think is we're right at the crest of, I think, some really big, exciting changes ahead. And some of it's going to be driven by the cost structure. And it seems to me, Peter, you are directly in that world, which is, when I talk to the people that you're providing services to, whether it's the chief business officer, whether it's the procurement director, whether it's a buyer, one of the things I keep reminding them is there's no other division in an institution who has the data to then make the case. What we haven't done sufficiently well yet is to really empower and teach people who are the owners of the data to be telling the story of the data. See, the data is not the story. the story needs to be supported by the data. And I think that's partly where the real power lies in this conversation, which is how do we get people who live in the world, who get access to your tools that can look at these reports, to tell a story about why we need to change. And that, to me, is what the real power of providing ease of use and the kind of access that you're providing for institutions to then take the next step. But I think we're still infants in that conversation about how to tell a good story through the chain so that people are committed to change.
I think one of the powerful aspects of these tools, exactly as you've pointed out, is the amount of information and the quality of information and granularity of information that it can provide. And then, of course, the challenge is how do you interpret and act upon that information to make sure that you're continually becoming more efficient and reducing your costs over time. And as you also alluded to, this imperative for organisations to reduce the cost of education, given the escalating year-on-year increases, which really there's not much justification for why that should be the case. It really should be year-on-year reductions in the cost of education.
What I was interested in, Peter, is when you look ahead in the next year, 2 years, given your role to lead and then, in a sense, I'm sure to empower others to be able to think about not just design, but integrating and involving themselves with the institutions. When you look ahead over the next year or two, what are some things that you see that Unimarket's looking to position itself to do, or provide even more value over this next period of a year and 2 years?
Yeah, well, there's two things I'd comment on. One is very much what we're looking to do at the moment is not only bringing this ease of use e-procurement aspect, but actually looking at the whole procurement life cycle and bringing in the one place, and this is why we talk about simple and easy to use technology that brings all of your procurement into one place. So we have a sourcing module which is fully integrated with the e-procurement, which is fully integrated with contracts management. So trying to actually say, if you've got a single interface which is really easy for people to use, let's get everything we're trying to do into that same single easy-to-use interface and enable us to manage a lot more of what we're doing with procurement through that single medium. So that's what we're sort of seeing in the near term. The other thing that I'd really like to be seeing more of is collaboration between universities using the technology. So there's definitely real opportunities for universities to work together, and if they're using the same tool. So a number of Unimarket customers, and some of them have done this, but in quite small pockets, there's real opportunity for them to actually work together in the same tool, because it's a multi-tenant. That means all of our customers on a single instance of the solution. So there's real opportunity, I think, for much closer collaboration and even more savings to be achieved. So that's the thing that I'm looking forward to over the next couple of years.
I'll tell you why I think that's really exciting, because in my conversations with higher ed leaders, one of the things that they're looking more critically at is these ideas of strategic alliances. And the most obvious strategic alliances are back office systems. The reason these haven't happened in many cases is because of the complexity and the fact that we don't feel like we can, without causing a disruption in operations, find a way to work together. But if the ease of use becomes present for ourselves and another institution that we could partner with, that could be the differentiator for why an institution would then say, let's partner on this. And that is a huge opportunity for cost reduction. There's cultural elements about why institutions have a hard time thinking that way, but I am certain, Peter, that over time, we're going to see more and more of those examples. And as they become more known, for example, in the higher ed publications like the Chronicle and Business Officer, and as college presidents are talking about this, we're going to see more and more of those kind of strategic alliances. So I think you are well positioned around that concept, and I think it's a brilliant direction to go.
Yeah, well, we're really excited about the opportunity that's presented in the market. So the future is looking very good from our perspective.
It is. It is a bright future, and these best-in-class institutions who already realize just how important it is to dog food toward adaptability and change. I think they get it, and it's fun to see the growth that can come out of it. Peter Kane, where would you like to invite people to learn more about you and Unimarket?
Well, our website for a start, unimarket.com. Actually, we've just been through a branding and process where we sort of reskinned our website, so that's a great place to go. They can also find us on LinkedIn, of course, as well. But the website in the first port of call.
So here's what you don't know, Pete, about Peter. He's quite an athlete. So I'm not going to let you get away with not sharing. Is this a triathlon? What did you finish just training, or did you tell us where you are in this next thing that I'm never going to do?
Well, I was in. Obviously we had the conference in Chicago, but I had been there the previous month for the age group world champs triathlon, which were in Chicago, which is a great venue for it. Which is Olympic distance. I'm actually training at the moment for a half Ironman in New Zealand in Taupo in about 3 weeks' time.
How much longer are you going to keep doing this?
As long as I can. You've got to have this. You've got to have the balance between, the mental activity and the physical activity, and just to keep everything. Keep everything working. The healthier you are, the easier it is to use the top 2 inches anyway.
Well, that's why Howard and I have been working so hard to put together the Navigating Change triathlon, and it's an Ironman triathlon. I'm very excited about it.
I'm a starter.
I'm going to walk to Portland, and then you're going to walk to Boston, Pete.
That's right. Oh, that's fantastic. I'll meet you in Denver. This has been a great conversation, and kudos to you, Peter, on your athletic triumphs. That's fantastic and aspirational, certainly for me. We appreciate you coming to us via the cans and string that we have hobbled together to talk to you from New Zealand today. You sound great.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah. No. We've used Howard a couple of times at our conferences with our customers, and they love him and his material, and it's very insightful. So it's been a pleasure to talk with you guys today.
Thank you one more time to Peter Kane, CEO of Unimarket. On behalf of Howard Teibel, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next week on Navigating Change, the podcast from Teibel Inc.